Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live edition of the Multifamily Hangout. I'm Adrian Danila, your host. I want to start by thanking our wonderful sponsors for making this broadcast possible. They are Apartment Snapshot, Kairos Water, and GPS Roof Leak Repairs. With this being said, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host today, Chris Moreno. Take it away, sir.
And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And looking forward to seeing your questions below for today's guest. We will answer them live on the screen. A few cool things that I'm excited about hearing from our guest today. He has an extensive history in the multifamily space, not only from operations, but to technology and really around people. And so I'm really excited to hear some of the stories around working and driving teams to meet expectations and to look at future deliverables. And I think one of the coolest things is hearing a little bit about Steve's focus on growing the portfolio from 6,000 units to upwards of 30,000 units. So without further ado, welcome to our guest, Steve Matre.
Hey, thank you for the invite.
What I'd love to hear, Steve, if you don't mind, can you share a little bit about your history and how you fell into multifamily and maybe a little bit of the evolution of where you got to and how you got to today?
It's a long story. I actually was really lucky. I started off in accounting. I double majored. I was finance and English major in college. And I wanted to be an attorney, but my parents did not want to pay for law school. So I said, okay, I'm going to go right into the working world. And I was lucky enough to land at a full service real estate called Benjamin Sherman and Sons back in 1991. I started on their accounting team. At the time, they were property management, commercial portfolio. Around my about 5-year tenure, I was given the title of assistant controller and was able to sort of join the financial review meetings about the portfolio, given a seat at the table. And this was at a time when some of the bigger companies that have been around for a while now, like Redwood Residential, they were going through a really major growth spurt. One of our higher level property management and asset management pros went over to EQR. That created an opportunity for me. And the company was nice enough to move me into sort of the head of property management, a VP of operations position over the portfolio. And it was a really fun opportunity. We had about between 7 and 10,000 units in, I think it was 8 states at the time. I just dove right in. It was trial by fire. I traveled almost every week. When you visited a city, you shopped the market, you walked the properties, you looked at ads, you met with the whole team, you reviewed financials, but you kind of had to do it all in person, which was great to bond with the team. Might not have been super productive compared to today, but it was just a really terrific opportunity management. I stayed in operations for a little while. I was offered a great opportunity at Banner Properties in Chicago. And I actually stayed at Banner for about 17 years. And I was really able to flex some different types of muscles there. So I was in operations for 3 years. And then we went through succession planning and we hired a new CEO. When he came aboard and did his kind of initial assessment, he said, you know what, you're a real people person. And he was obsessed with having sort of an official training function. So I said, give me 30 days, let me put together my plan, which I did. And I spent the next, I think, 7 years as our head of training, marketing, and revenue management. That was probably my favorite job just because I felt a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. You know, I was coaching our people. I was overseeing marketing, so I kind of knew what we could expect to bring into the portfolio. And I was our first revenue manager when we brought revenue management to the company. So it really allowed me to explore those 3 different disciplines. After a few years of that, our head of HR retired, and they approached me and said, hey, can you step into the head of HR role? So I said, yes, I would do that. So I was head of HR and training for the final 6 years I was at Banner, and that really was that was a challenge. And during the pandemic, I opted to move on, and I went up to the Mandel Group in Milwaukee, another really terrific company. They had a portfolio of about 6,500 units, but they were primarily developers, and they built and designed really beautiful products. So I was their VP of operations support, so doing training and marketing, and then working on a number of different initiatives because they were also going through succession planning as well. So they were open to trying a lot of new things. And I was just really happy to be on their team, bring some initiatives to fruition. And we had an awesome support team. It was a really great group of people. But then in 2023, the Redwood opportunity came along. I met with the team here. They were really just a great group of people, very smart, very forward thinking. So I opted to come back to Chicago, and I was senior VP of property management. And the thing that I love most about it is that I am head of operations, but I also get to oversee the support disciplines as well. So training, marketing, facilities and maintenance, HR, and technologies. It's another one of these positions that really allows me to collaborate with a lot of really great people.
Is there anything in property management that you haven't done yet?
I have never been an asset manager.
From a mental perspective, What does it take to make all these radical shifts? For me, they're pretty radical. They're in the same industry, but operations, accounting, marketing, HR. What does it take from a mental perspective?
From the very beginning, I think my dad always told me like you should be very practical. So of course, when I was in college, I got a degree in finance. That was the practical side. But the creative side of me told me to also get a degree in English because I'm a huge reader. I'm a curious person. I also like to speak and write. So I feel like I've always been one of these people who likes to explore different things. So even though I started off in accounting, I was asked at Sherman to sort of design different tools and procedures for different lines of business that we were doing. I was able to sort of flex those creative muscles. The days when I first went into operations, you did a little bit of everything. So I had my first operations role back in 1997. We did not have HR department. We did not have training. We did not have risk management. I just was kind of forced to move my mind in a lot of different directions, which I liked. And then I also got involved with that crew. There's probably some people, hopefully there's some people out there watching today, like the brainstorming folks. I was one of the brainstorming facilitators. So I always loved to speak, train, coach, and then also sort of brainstorm good marketing ideas. I don't really know what it takes. I was always just one of those people who was more than happy to dive into the creative side, and I never really wanted just one lane.
And you mentioned about books and being an avid reader. I know I get into books and audiobooks especially. Are you more, it sounds like with the creativity, are you more into nonfiction, fiction? Do you like business? And I know I listen to like Simon Sinek and Daily Stoic, or anyone you really are into right now that you could share with the audience.
I go in phases. So there was a few years where all I read was self-help, and I got that out. Like I love the book Radical Candor, because everyone's trying to work on, our business is just such a people business. You're always trying to be happy. You're always trying to coach your people and form really good relationships. There was a time when all I read was self-help, business books. Right now I'm reading like a lot of really great novels. Right now I'm into fiction. And then we're also in an election year. So after the election year, I'll probably read like political history, politics for a little while. I tend to go in phases. I don't know if I have a favorite. My concentration in my English degree was British. It was literary criticism, British Victorian. I think my favorite author is Thomas Hardy. Every once in a while, I'll go back and start reading like the classic novels. I go all over the place.
As someone who has held leadership positions in various organizations, what leadership qualities do you believe are essential for success in a multifamily industry?
That's a big question. I think as I've gotten older, I've really changed what my idea of leadership is and means. As the world's changed and people's expectations have changed, I feel, and also given the unique demands of property management, we are so spread out. I really feel like a good leader has to have that ability to set the vision. I think that every community manager, property manager is really a kind of a mini CEO. A company's culture really depends on the leadership abilities of the community managers and the various discipline leaders. So I feel like one of the big responsibilities in my position now is to make sure that everybody understands what the long-term vision is for the company. So everybody knows which way we're going. I feel like a good leader keeps people talking and creates a lot of formats for open discussion so that everybody feels involved. And I think a good leader really looks at all the processes and makes sure that we're not just doing a process to get the process done. And that's kind of the business side. And I think on the people side, I've become much more empathetic over the years. I'm one of those people who really sticks. I live by my routines. But when I say empathy, some people are very apt to correct people when they've maybe made one mistake. I feel like our personal lives do influence our work life a lot. And not everybody can perform at their absolute top all the time just based on the things that are going on in their lives. And I think that good leaders have to be really empathetic to what's going on in people's personal lives and give a little grace. I feel like a leader has to have a really good sense of self, be very secure in what their strengths are, but also know what your gaps are and know when to ask for help. And I think you really have to be a lifelong learner. Change is so rapid. Not only do our initiatives change, but our needs change. And I think you just have to commit to being a lifelong learner and never stop, building your skill sets and being open to new things.
I love the focus on curiosity, learning. I've kind of like focused on that and always said like, when people call me an expert, I'm like, oh, I'm very cautious of that terminology. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that around how do you ensure like for yourself as you're learning, how much time you're spending on learning, and the same thing with your teams. Do you have like formalized processes of training, and do you Do you kind of mandate that your team set aside a certain amount of time towards training? And is it third parties? Is it internal? Can you share some of the secrets of what you've found success in?
Yeah, I find that in our industry, to be quite transparent, training, we have a little bit of a training gap right now. It's something that we're really working on at Redwood and thinking a lot about it, kind of redesigning. We're redesigning policy and procedure. And then, of course, you roll out policy and procedure, and it just organically leads to a lot of training, a lot of coaching. I believe that in multifamily, training needs to be fairly formulaic just because you're onboarding people in different cities. And so it's very hard unless your entire portfolio is in one city. We're very spread out. I think we're in 6 or 7 states. It's really difficult to provide a consistent experience to everyone that comes up into your company. I think it has to be fairly formulaic, and I think you really have to nail the first 60 days. I really believe in like a 30 to 45-day development plan for each position. That development plan needs to be executed between training, technology, and direct supervisors. We all have to train each other. I also believe in e-learning. I'm a huge fan of Grace Hill because I think they have some of the best content out there. We use it just because I think we have to. We do not have a time commitment that everybody has to spend on training. I think that LinkedIn is definitely having a moment. I love scrolling through LinkedIn for a few minutes every day just to see what people at other companies are doing. And I love to take leadership lessons away. Book recommendations, podcast recommendations. I love to go to conferences. I don't really go to a conference to party. I certainly like to see people and reconnect with friends in the multifamily space. But I'm one of those people who will plan my education out, and I will go to every time slot on the education program because I think that some of the conferences out there are the best way to learn. We had all of our support team together in Chicago this week for our quarterly meeting just to talk about all the initiatives that we have in process. And I always forget the people that work with me. Some of the best lessons come from those group discussions. So I definitely learn a ton from the people who work alongside with me.
When it comes to building teams, what are your principles that are guiding you in building a team around you? What are some things that you're looking for when you're building? Like, for example, right now, you haven't been with Redwood for a long period of time yet, right? So what are some principles that guide you in building your team, putting a winning team together?
So I do like to have a fairly comprehensive interview process where people get a chance to meet several people in the company. Describing someone as a good fit is kind of a weird thing to me. I think you kind of know it when you see it. You feel it. There's good conversation, and they're bringing like top skills to the table. I like people with a pretty broad background, and I like people with a very good feel for the business. And I really like and appreciate those people who can take a number but tell a story around it. There's not a lot of people out there who can look at a KPI dashboard and point to the 5 or 6 things that need work, formulate the story, and then head out into the field and really coach people to take actions to move those numbers in the direction you need them to move. Really attracted to those folks who not only really understand the business, but who can tell a good story around it and really chart a course to success.
I really enjoy that, as you say, those storytellers. I think life, the great storytellers in life. And my grandfather was one, and I loved learning and hearing him talk. And I'm curious to know, as you talk about this and the people you've surrounded yourselves with over your career, are there a few people you can share, maybe some memorable examples, maybe some folks who've made a big impact on you and in your career and your life?
I feel like there's been some great people. I have worked with a lot of really great people. Going back to the beginning of my career at Sherman Residential, that was a family company, but they had a really great history. I think they just recently celebrated their 100th year. I wish I was so proud of them when I saw that. David Sherman, who's their chairman and CEO, he was such an impressive guy. He went to Harvard. He really took the company in a lot of different directions, and he was just very sharp, very classy, and he was just a really terrific example of leadership. And when I went over to Banner, their founders as well, the Pinsky family, they were wonderful people with great hearts. And they were always very honest about the things that they were great at. And when I went up to Mandel, I was lucky to work with someone named Carly Stevenson, who was also someone who had really distinguished herself at some of the major players in Chicago as well. And she came up to Milwaukee and took a chance, and she was president of Mandel Group for a little while. And I think that I learned more from her in probably a year and a half of working together. Of course, she was so great. She got stolen away, and now she's out. She's the executive VP over about 20,000 units out in Irvine, California, but she just had a great feel for, she messaged everything perfectly. She kept us all on track with forward momentum. She just knew how to connect with you on such a personal level and make you feel so valued. And Mandel had a really interesting approach. We had access to a few consultants. We worked with Mona Stalling, who used to be at Avalon Bay, and we worked with Elaine Williams, who had been VP of operations for UDR for a long time. And these two ladies were so smart. They were such a wealth of knowledge. And not only did they help sort of with our business plan, but they also spent time with us individually, coaching us. And the platform at Mandel was very forward thinking, very collaborative, very tech centric. It was a great company to learn at with a great group of people. And the allowed us to have access to Mona and Elaine was a terrific thing. And then here at Redwood, I'm not going to single anybody out, but I will tell you that I'm surrounded by a lot of great people. And not everybody knows this. Redwood, if you go to our website, it feels very boutique-y, but we are actually part of the largest, probably top real estate companies in the world. Our parent company is EQT Exeter. It has a really storied history. So our global CEO, Ward Fitzgerald, I wish I knew him a little bit better on a personal level. He runs a big organization, but he's the kind of guy who, when we have our trimester meetings, we pull together 3 times a year, and he gets up and gives a really inspirational talk about what our vision is, just very motivational. And it's a source of pride because every once in a while you'll see him pop up on CNBC. He's really seen as an expert in the real estate field. I tend to stay at companies for a little while, and it is because of the great people. Because I've been lucky along through the years to learn from a lot of really, really consummate professional people out there in the industry. And I could name more people than that. I've been so lucky.
Before going to the next question, Steve, I do want to give a shout out to those in the audience that are watching us live. Thank you for joining us, for hanging out with us today. Go ahead and drop a line in the comments. Let us know where you're watching us from. And also, if you have questions for Steve, please type them in the comments. We will be watching the comments feed, and we will ask Steve your questions on your behalf. Could you speak on the importance of networking? How important is networking for you? And also, how important is to build a personal brand intentionally? Because the brands, in my opinion, they do exist, whether we do a conscientious effort, we put a conscientious effort into building them or not, they do exist. We are brands.
I may be very naive. I don't know that I really focus on building a personal brand, but that being said, I feel like, I don't know, I'm one of those people on social media who I just feel like it's like the thing, if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one there, does it really make a noise? And I feel like if you're not on social media, do you really exist? I don't always love social media, but I do feel pulled in. I feel the need to share. So that does fall under networking, obviously, because I feel like the more you put out there, the more people are going to share back to you. A lot of things appeal to me, especially on the people side. So I'll see like a really interesting interview about team building or about interview skills or speaking skills. And I do like to share those resources out there. I feel like I'm such a podcast addict these days, and I love to share good podcasts. And I've been networking, I think, is really important. I go way back to way before social media. So I feel like getting involved in the apartment association. When I first jumped into operations back at Sherman Residential, involved in the apartment association in every one of our cities, and that was a little bit much. I couldn't really do it effectively, but it was such a great way to meet people. And then anytime anyone ever asked me to speak or like the brainstorming, be a facilitator, I always said yes, simply because it was a great way to meet people. The industry has changed so much. There's something like 50 million units under professional management now in the United States. The industry was nowhere near that big 30 years ago. Getting a good education, and there were no bachelor's degrees. Now there's probably 20 universities that offer a bachelor's in property management. Number one, it was really hard to get a good education in property management. So I always use networking as a way to just find people to ask questions. And I was one of those people back in, I think Lisa Trozine, everybody knows Lisa. I think she hosted something all the way on Yahoo Groups, if anyone remembers what Yahoo Groups was. We options for each other out there, and people could throw a topic out. And I think that I was one of those people who always answered the question. I loved that forum. And I think that a lot of people just started to recognize my name. So that was sort of an organic way to meet people at conferences. So I do absolutely believe in networking. I just think you need to find those people who are going to teach you and make you better. Personal branding thing, I don't think about it a lot. Maybe I do have a brand, and I just don't know it.
It's funny, as you said, I'm similar. I don't think about it as much, but I think about more like, what are people interested in hearing from me?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
interesting to them, to your point. I think some people do try to create a brand, and that's for them and not for everybody. I think to your point about Lisa T always being at the cutting edge, she's someone I've gotten to learn from at events. I just love how she does share on so many different topics and opines and asks questions of folks. And I'd ask you, as you were talking about education, I am seeing more and more opportunities now for people getting into the industry, can go to college, can get mentorship. There's some phenomenal programs. Like, what advice would you have, whether it's someone who's looking to get in the industry and or someone who's looking to move up in their next career path? What advice would you give to them? Maybe something you've learned.
If anyone's thinking about it, I think we should all sort of be advocates to bring people in, because it's really such a good career path. A lot of people think you're going to be pigeonholed into one thing wherever you start. It's really not true. I can't believe how big some of the management companies have gotten. Career paths are really sort of limitless. You may start in leasing, which is not a bad place to start. I think leasing is probably the most fun job that you're going to have in property management. But by honing those skills, you can move into training, you can move into technology. I mean, with some of the big third-party players, the fee management side, you can be client support, you can be client-facing. There's just so many different things that you can do. I think you asked the question, what would my advice be for someone who's looking to be promoted? Is that what you said?
Yeah, whether it's promoted, find a new career path, track, any of the above.
Yeah, I would say for my biggest advice for the people who want to be promoted is, please don't try to be promoted so fast. I think a lot of people want to move up the chain so quickly, but I think that it's really each position as you move around side to side laterally to the different disciplines, or if you want to move up through the operations chain, I think it's just really important to sit still for a little while and really master the position that you're in, so that you not only learn a really solid basis for the business and for that position, but you also really learn to be proactive and strategic, because that's the most value that you can bring to a company. Not only being ready to move up, but also in that next position, learning to just really plan ahead so that you can really guarantee your results.
Steve, could you share some memorable experiences or projects from your career that have a significant impact on you and on your career?
Some of the firsts come to mind. I would go all the way back to my accounting days. Like the first time I was ever asked to design a set of tools or tracking tools for a new function inside the company was always very flattering. Or first time that I was asked to meet with our outside accounting firm and take charge of those types of relationships, that sticks out. People talk about getting your seat at the table. I remember the first time I was asked to really sit in a financial review and share my knowledge about the things that I saw that was going on financially on our financial statements, and asked to do some deeper analysis as to trends that I saw. At Banner, I would say I had never had any lease up or development experience until I went over to Banner, and they started a development group. First lease up we did really sticks out to me. It was a smaller property, but nonetheless, it was a great educational opportunity. It was one of those things where, a lease up, it was new to me, ground up development. And so in terms of like building all of the marketing assets, all you're given is a set of blueprints. And from that set of blueprints, you're asked to design a marketing plan. So we did all the digital assets, the collateral, set up the initial websites. We were given the budget to work with a PR firm to sort of do a lot of community outreach, plan events. And then the whole team got together and we started doing community sponsorships like picnics and booths at different community functions, really to get the word out. All the while we were doing that, we were watching the building be constructed of Chicago here. And it was just a really fun period of momentum where everyone got together. And when we opened up the property, we were just all really proud. And that experience, we continued to develop. I didn't do that many lease ups with Banner, but then when I went to Mandel, I was able to participate in about 5 lease ups in the 2.5 years that I was at Mandel, which I really enjoyed a lot. And at Banner, I was asked to literally set up a training department from scratch. And that was really flattering. And they allowed me to pick my team. First people that got together with me, and we did that together. We are still really close friends. We don't work together anymore. And those are kind of the experiences that really bond people. What else really sticks out? Things like all the times you were allowed to do like new programs or motivational things at companies, like the award programs that I've been asked to contribute to, or when I was able to MC in my various position awards dinner at my company, and just to see how much that recognition really mattered to people. And then there's funny stories, like we were rolling out online payments and the company that we used just forgot to turn off the settings. Overnight, all of our online payments went live without us knowing. We came in the next morning and someone from one of the properties said, did we roll out online payments? I'm like, no, I don't think so. But we decided to just all huddle in the conference room, do the marketing collateral. And we said, let's just roll with it because we're probably thinking too much about it. Bam, overnight, we implemented online payments for the first time in the portfolio. We got through it because we had a great team.
Some of the best made decisions and biggest decisions, you just make a decision instantly and go with it.
Yeah.
It's about adjusting. How do you stay educated and stay on top of all these tech trends, the AI developments, things that are happening? And how do you think about rolling those out? What's the process you go through?
I can't believe where the industry's gone in the last 15 years has been only nonstop tech and new platforms. I think I stay on top of it by remaining networked in and learning from the people around me. I was excited when I came to Redwood. We really weren't using artificial intelligence yet. But in Mandel, we had dived into it with AI leasing. And now it's not only leasing, but also collections, renewals, resident communication. When I came to Redwood, you feel like you come to a company like this and you're not going to be able to really contribute anything. But I was thrilled that I could say like, hey, I have a little experience with AI. So what do you guys think about doing this? And they asked me to just kind of put together, which I did. We are rolling out AI leasing on the entire portfolio, which is exciting to do. We're going to probably continue to go down that road and see what it's going to do for us. In terms of rolling things out, I feel like everybody's always chomping at the bit to get things out there, and rolling things out is just really difficult. You just have to let everybody in the company know really what the why is and what you're expecting it to accomplish. Then you have to develop some internal experts who can support it really well. And then just be cognizant of how everybody feels. Even though you think it might be easy, it really is changing people's habits. People like to do things. They really own the processes that they do. So even though you think you're giving them this great gift of technology, they're thinking, well, you're kind of ruining the process that I had in place. So you really have to sell that technology to everyone, make sure that everyone knows the why, and just make sure that you have some coaches and advocates that are going to be able to support your people along the way. Because it takes a while for these platforms to really become embedded in your culture and be successful.
Next, I'd like to take a question from our live audience, and I want to encourage you in the audience to drop your questions in first. We're going to keep an eye on our comments. The question comes from Jason Biscoff. Do you mind sharing some of the good and bad of picking up and moving cities to join a new company?
It's a great question, Jason. Moving is probably the most stressful thing you can do. I lived in Chicago for a really long time. The last time I moved 80 miles away to Milwaukee. It was very close. And Milwaukee's like a mini Chicago. You really just have to be sure about the company that you're joining. Take the recruiting process seriously and make sure that all of your questions are answered. And if you're someone like me who I really attach to home and I attach to a neighborhood and friends. So it was stressful for me to do it. But I think the right attitude is just be excited about the opportunity, go to that new city. Don't only focus on work. I know that sometimes when you join a new company, that job becomes 100% of your focus, but it's really important to don't wait very long. Get moved, get into your new job, but also get out there into your new city and really explore some neighborhoods and find people that can join you in activities. If you're a runner, find a running club. If you're a reader, find a book club, just so that you very quickly get enmeshed in the culture of that city and find a new tribe, so to speak. It was much easier to come back to Chicago, but moving is always hard.
Yeah, especially I moved cross country and it was incredible and people were warning me, but I think I had lower expectations because of all the people telling me how hard it would be and how tough it would be moving to the South for me. What are maybe some of the biggest challenges you're seeing in the multifamily industry right now? Certain things you've seen in different markets, but I'm kind of curious to know from an operations standpoint, what are some of the things you think are the biggest challenges or hurdles that we're currently experiencing?
I think the biggest challenge, I think it's people. Anyone who's watching realizes it, but anyone outside of our industry just does not realize how broad it is. So if you're in operations, we're a very regulated industry. So, the first thing we do is we train our folks in fair housing, and it's different in every state. Protected classes are different, requirements are different. We're a very regulated industry. One of the huge challenges on the people side is making sure that you are providing enough training and enough resources for people to really master it. Platforms that people have to embrace. I really feel for our community managers and I really feel for our regional managers. Those positions are so incredibly tough. They're expected to always know their numbers. They are expected to know every law. They're expected to be coaches. Some portfolios are spread out in various cities, it's definitely the people side. And I think that customer expectations these days, we have to keep changing with what the customer expectation is. And it's very hard to mirror the world out there. Like everybody lives through their phone and most people get so bored so quickly. We have such a short attention span. And out there in the real world, if people get tired of an app, they delete and find a new one to replace it. We have customers, residents, they want it when they want it. They want everything now. They want it fast. But renting an apartment is a long transaction. You build that relationship, you apply online. We have to qualify people. We have to create a special memorable moment when they move in, but we also have to comply with a tremendous amount of laws and regulations. It's just very difficult to be sort of that 24/7, give it when people want it type of industry. A lot of companies are mastering it pretty well. I rent right now, the management company, but boy, do they do a good job with their portal. Maintenance comes fast. They get things done very quickly. It was a very easy leasing process. And at Redwood internally, boy, we really just coach our people to be very productive, to be very relationship oriented. The expectations are high, especially for our site teams. Dealing with those expectations day in and day out, it's a huge challenge. Retention and keeping people motivated and keeping them trained and keeping up with the technology. There's a lot of management companies out there that are handling it really nice.
Steve, I want to go next and switch to opportunities. What are some opportunities that you see for us as an industry in a current environment?
Well, I sort of think it's the same thing. I think it's data and it's technology. I cannot live without business intelligence anymore. Our company, we are hoping to grow tremendously over the next few years. Our business intelligence platform, it's almost overwhelming in the amount of data that it offers. One thing that I have tried to do, and I have an awesome analyst helping me with this, is we're really parsing out like the most meaningful KPIs. So I feel like the opportunity there is just sometimes you can be overwhelmed with the data, but these platforms are getting so cool and so slick. All you need to do is you can find any bit of data or information that you want in a moment's notice. Like I'm not sitting around waiting for people to bring me reports. I am in our BI system, in our software. I'm looking at the numbers that I want to look at so that I can have very easy meetings. I think that's a huge opportunity. And I think the technology is a huge opportunity to provide better service. And I'll just say artificial intelligence is kind of a big thing right now. I don't really look at it as a way to cut payroll. I think there's some opportunity there. But first and foremost, something like AI leasing, if you're having all of your leads responded to 24/7, that just means that when someone comes in for an appointment or a meeting, be it a prospect or a resident, I feel like in the past, before AI, our teams kind of had one eye at the door because whenever they were touring someone with a resident, they were sort of just waiting for that next interruption to happen. These days, if you've got AI, the AI platforms are so good that most prospects don't know that they're dealing with a bot. With an artificial intelligence platform, the technology has gotten so slick, but it gives our people the peace of mind that they can have a nice interaction with a human being who's in front of them. It adds to that human experience and the customer experience. And I feel like, boy, does it also, there's the platforms like the AI collections. If you can just keep reminding people that they have a balanced view, then our teams don't have to worry about that your teams can work on other things. So I feel like there is just a great opportunity with technology to have instantaneous KPIs and numbers so you know where you need to improve. Those KPIs and number platforms also help you teach the business to the people in your firm. But I also think that the technology has really provided a really positive customer experience.
We are in the business of hospitality, right? And experience. Yeah. Something else I wanted to touch on, someone had given me great advice, which was get involved in advocacy in this industry, right? As you said, it's such highly regulated, whether it's local, state, or national laws can impact the NOI, the profitability, our jobs, development. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, on balancing, your activity and personal responsibilities at your business along with the involvement in local and national associations, whether that's NMHC or NAA, et cetera. So I want to get your thoughts there on how you balance that and how you see it.
So I think it's really important. I also think there's seasons in your life when you may not have time to do it. I love to speak. I'll take any speaking opportunity that I'm offered. I think that's really important. I'm not a huge fan. I know people love to do the lobby day. I did that a few times. It wasn't really my bailiwick. I wasn't comfortable doing it. I do like being involved in the local apartment association and national apartment association because I think that, boy, it's a great forum for people to get to know each other. but I also love that they provide education. But when you talk about balance, there's seasons of sacrifice. Right now, I am not able to balance it. So I would say that I am definitely tilting very heavily into my job right now. I really enjoy Redwood and I love all the initiatives that my team and I are working on. We're working on so many different things that I have to be honest and say I am doing zero participation at the moment in any of the apartment associations because I just can't do it. So hopefully maybe a year from now, I'll be able to get involved again. So for the people who can make that time to do both sides, that's terrific and it's super important. And when you ask about balance for me right now, it's all about Redwood. But I think it's really cool to participate in all those organizations. And if I someday when I've got a little bit more time, I am definitely going back. But I do have some speaking things coming up. I love making time to do that because it's a great way to meet people and just get out there and help and share ideas.
Steve, one of the stakeholders in our industry, and a very important one, is service providers. I get approached by service providers that are asking me for advice. Hey, how can we sell to, a certain company, or how can we sell to multifamily? With that being said, I'd like to get your advice on this particular subject. And I want to put up a question from Dwayne Carpenter. He says, I'd like to know what attributes Redwood might look for in service providers when selecting vendors to help maintain their properties.
Oh, sure. I mean, first and foremost, we want to work with a service partner with really solid business practices. So those attributes would be when sometimes it's a long decision cycle. So when you're getting to know the decision makers at a company like Redwood or like any of the other management companies out there, it's really important to understand their business platform, make it clear what you can bring to the table. And then when you do enter into an agreement with a management company, get to know the people, be open to regular discussions, and be open to their requirements. There's always a little bit of a game. We credential our vendors. We have a service agreement that we want people to use. Just be very respectful of our time, try to build that relationship, be very ethical, have high quality standards, because we're relying on you to provide quality to our residents, especially that person was asking, they're obviously a facilities or maintenance type vendor, so relying on them to provide quality work for our residents and to maintain our properties.
It can be really lonely in this business and a lot of businesses at times. What keeps you going throughout your career? What keeps you going on a daily basis?
That's funny. I'm certainly not lonely. Maybe I'm lucky. I'm surrounded by a lot of very giving people. What keeps me going is I think we've landed at Redwood. We're sort of a meeting heavy company, but we have very productive meetings. I do like to have weekly one-on-ones with everyone who reports to me. And I do like to bring the group together on a somewhat regular basis because I think that the togetherness really energizes that whole group. And I really think it's important to just keep everybody informed as to what everybody else is doing and how we can help each other out. That's really the key for me. And I don't know what keeps me going. I don't know. I think it's just property management has been one of those businesses that's really sort of fed me very well because it allows you to move in so many different directions. Even though someone says they might be in operations, what does operations mean? I mean, you're out there walking properties, you're doing facilities, you're doing marketing, you're coaching, you're training, you're learning, you're doing sales training. You're moving in so many different directions to operate well in property management and multifamily. The thing that keeps me going and that I really kind of fell in love with our industry is just the fact that it allows you to flex so many different types of creative muscles. And it's always been the people. It's always been the people. I've been so lucky at my companies to be surrounded by really smart, talented people.
Steve, it was a real pleasure having you here today. I'd like to give you the opportunity to share some final thoughts with the audience.
I feel like our industry and I feel like the current business climate can be a little bit overwhelming. I know that the economy hasn't really been, in a lot of ways, it's been great to us over the past few years. We've had good rent growth. There is still a housing shortage. So even though some of these big developers are putting a lot of units out there into our markets, there's still a lot of demand for multifamily. So, the multifamily sector has really been a leader in real estate over the past few years. We've done extremely well. But I also know that being in our industry can be a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of new technology. There's a lot of change. And I do hear the word overwhelmed a lot. And for all those people out there who say they're overwhelmed, my advice to you would be to just kind of remember, you can't do it all. No one's really expecting you to do it all. No one's expecting you to be perfect. And I think just Gosh, give your best every day. Be a good team member. Help each other out because I think that burnout is real in our industry. And I think that the customer facing side, it's a lot of pressure there. I say this on every company call that we do. We do these rally calls where we have all of our teams together, all of them together. I always remind everyone, like, boy, feel free to vent about us. Go out for happy hour, go out for dinner, go bowling, do something as a team because I think one of the best things that you can do for yourselves is just lean on each other. Sometimes a good vent session helps, but also just work on bonding that team because the people around you is really what's going to be most valuable in sort of getting you through any challenge. Work through that overwhelm by being a really good teammate to each other.
I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up this conversation. Chris Moreno, any final thoughts, sir?
It was a blast, Steve. Really appreciated getting to know you better and hearing your stories. And I'm excited to see you continue to beat your expectations and to have an amazing culture. So can't wait to see you in less than 2 months in real life in Philadelphia.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching us today. I'm Adrian Danila, your host of Multifamily Hangout here, and want to thank our sponsors, Apartment Snapshot, Kairos Water, and GPS Roof Leak Repairs for making this broadcast possible. Thank again all of you that join us today live, and we hope to see you next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, back on a Multifamily Hangout. Have an amazing day.
Bye, everyone.